5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome once again to Thacker Mountain Radio Hour. We're coming to you tonight from Founders Square Pavilion on the fairgrounds of the Neshoba County Fair outside of Philadelphia, Mississippi. Our next guest, as so many of you know, that we're delighted to mix literature and music on this 1 hour that we have, and very lucky in Oxford to have not one but 3 bookstores right there on the square, and authors come through quite frequently, so we're very lucky on that score. Tonight's author is originally a Mississippi boy, now lives in Savannah, Georgia. I think he'll claim Mississippi. And y'all, I'm not kidding, I just finished his book this morning. It's called The World's Largest Man. And it's a memoir, it's nonfiction, all about Harrison and his half-brother growing up with their dad and their mom in Mississippi. Dad wants to get up every morning and go shoot something, preferably a deer. If it's fishing, it's time to go fishing. And Harrison got to the point, morning after morning after morning, go sit in the deer stand as a 7- and 8-year-old. He finally realized he just didn't really want to go hunting anymore. He was tired of going hunting. He had, his half-brother shooting everything in the woods, and Harrison hadn't gotten one yet. And the first 100 pages of this book, y'all, is absolutely hysterical. I recommend it to anyone who has parents or who has children, or who has ever been hunting, or doesn't even want to go hunting, but enjoys a very funny book that turns surprisingly tender. Great ending, great story. It's all true. I'm just amazed at this book, and you, Harrison. Thank you so much. By the way, we wanted to book him on the show. We said, we'll get you down in Ocean Springs. It's nice and air-conditioned. He said, no. I want to go to that Neshoba County Fair. Here he is. Y'all welcome Harrison Scott Key.
It is such an honor to be here. The first time I came to this fair, I was 13 years old. I sat in those pews and I watched the Hines Junior College High Steppers perform right here, and it changed my life. And I am going to step it up for you tonight, but I am wearing more clothes than they did. I want to tell you so many stories, but I'm just going to read from my book because it's so good. They said, read one thing. I said, can I read 2? Because it's so good. And they said, no. And I said, can you stop me? And they said, no. So here we go. This funny thing happens when people ask where I'm from, especially when I'm at academic conferences where people are so often from uninteresting places. Mississippi, I say. Oh, wow, they say. I can tell they've never seen a real live racist before. It's exciting for them. They want to tweet it. They want to write a memoir about it. So they say, what's Mississippi really like? I can tell what they really want to ask is, what was it like to grow up around crazy people who believe that whatever can't be shot should be baptized? But they are afraid to ask because they are not yet sure if I'm one of those people. I am, kind of, not really, sometimes. I do believe in the power of Jesus and rifles, but to keep things interesting, I also believe in the power of NPR and the scientific method. It is not easy explaining all this to educated people at cocktail parties, so instead I tell them that it was basically just like Faulkner described it, meaning that my state is too impoverished to afford punctuation. That I have seen children go without a comma for years. That I've seen some families save their whole lives for a semicolon. So this book is largely about my family and mostly about my father, and I'm going to read you a little bit of a story about him. What you need to know is that I disappointed my father in so many ways. So many, in fact, and what I also learned when you go on a book tour, I learned that every man ever born also has disappointed his father in so many ways. Some of us just have the ability to write books about it. Dads, we love you. All right. So this is about me being on a football team with my father. My father was supposed to play football with Coach Vaught at Ole Miss. He broke his femur in a game versus Hernando. He played for Coldwater, and that ended his football career forever. And so he did the next best thing, which is he got married 3 times, just trying to find a son. And finally, on number 3, he got me. Here we go. We won bowl trophies and whipped many teams across the county. Pop soon became a vaunted member of the fraternity of coaches, a real bootstraps kind of hero, and I'm grateful for what he did. It was fun, all the healthy camaraderie, the sleepovers after games, the time spent with my mother in the hospital while suffering from mild brain bleeding. I toughed it out, fought through phalanxes of giant corn-fed children, tried my hardest to do something right. I could barely understand the cryptic metaphors Pop used in his coaching. Eat his lunch, Pop would shout from the sidelines. Eat his what? His lunch, boy. What are you talking about? Let me hear some leather, Pop, boy. Leather, I would say. It sounded like something he'd pried out of a dictionary of 19th century hobo slang. You know, boy, he'd say, clapping. None of us was wearing leather as far as I could tell. Should we be? Did he want me to carry some kind of a whip? Take a 2x4 to him, Junior. To who? I'd say there's 11 of them. Yo, daddy crazy, my teammates would say, and I didn't disagree. Over the next 4 years, I tried to quit football approximately 842 times. I tried to quit so many times, and I kept saying over and over and over again. And I told him I wanted to join a team, and he said, like the baseball team? And I said, the chess team. Finally, he allowed me to quit. And then this is what you need to know before I read this next little bit. So it was over. I was not going to play football. And the years passed, and I was in high school. And then one day he comes into my room and he says, boy, get your cleats, get your gear. We're going to a game. I want you to suit up. Which was so weird because my father coached a pee-wee team. This is true. I will continue reading now. We arrived at the Center City complex of Pearl, Mississippi. And I remember that I did not very much like Pearl, a community best known for its excellent marching bands, violent dogs, and high rates of venereal disease. Their pee-wee teams were notoriously nasty, unmannered, and good. We didn't know why they had always been so much better and stronger and faster than us, but we suspected it had something to do with having stepfathers who abused them. I got your pads in back, boy, he said, and we walked toward the lights. I found all my old gear, the ancient jock strap that smelled of spring meadows. I undressed right there in the grassy glen, preparing to don equipment that I had first worn years earlier when I was not yet the size of a Viking warlord, as I was now, owing to a strict regimen of Cool Ranch Doritos. A quart of sweat later, I made a jarring lurch onto the field like Dr. Frankenstein's hopeful monster duct-taped inside a protective barrier of sofa cushions. My knees refused to flex, and my shoulders had grown too large for the shoulder pads, which now perched atop my clavicles rather than astride them, giving the effect of small and functionless wings sprouting from my neck. Who are you? A small uniform boy asked, looking up. I'm Coach Key's son, I said. You're big, he said, poking a finger deep into my fatty tissue. How old are you, they said. He's tall as my uncle. Hey, what grade is he in? Hey, what grade are you in? He ain't got no grade, Pop said. He's homeschooled. It was strange to hear my father lie so imaginatively. I said nothing, just stared dumbly, which only strengthened their belief in my retardation. I tried to be the bigger man. I was the bigger man. Grab a knee, Pop said, and I did as I was told. Lead us in a prayer, Pop said, and I did as I was told. I was disoriented at first by the giant-headed children raging around below me in the rain, and then 4 plays in, I got steamrolled by a child I hadn't seen coming and landed sideways in the orange mud. My teammates gathered around me, their dripping helmets wreathing the dark sky. One of them kicked me. I think Coach Key's son is dead. I elbowed myself to a sitting position. My small attacker was the size of a ferret, but appeared to be feeding on amino acids and gunpowder. I told you he was dumb, Rusty, his teammate said to him, high-fiving. It was embarrassing, getting whipped by a 5th grader named Rusty. What happened next would become the stuff of pee-wee football lore. In short, I became an enraged gorilla. At fullback, I folded up children like bad origami, including Rusty, who soon took to running in the opposite direction, shrieking. I chased down the largest players, knocked them into a new day of the week. I started calling the plays, took the handoff, ran over as many athletes as possible, which required several awkward turns and parabolic vectors before entering the end zone. On my second, or was it my third, touchdown, I dragged at least 4 defenders across the plane, along with one of my own pocket-sized teammates who had become excited and was riding me like a homecoming float. "It feels so good," he said. "It does," I said. I ran around children, over them, under them, and at one point fulfilled a childhood fantasy by throwing and then catching the very same pass. I made their running backs drop balls merely by barking at them. "He's got the rabies," they said. "He's an animal." And I played with abandon because I knew it would be my last football game ever, and also because, owing to puberty and the shrinking properties of cotton, my jockstrap finally fit. "Atta way, boy," Pop said. "Stack 'em like cordwood." Ah, yes, the metaphors. They all made sense now. I started inventing my own. "I just ate a tree," I said to a fallen Pearl athlete. "I'm about to grow a new head." "That don't even make sense," Rusty said from across the line. People were starting to talk. I saw them pointing, whispering. I knew there might be inquiries made about the depth of my voice and the hair on my arms and the date on my birth certificate. From what I could tell and hear, it was believed that I was either in high school or the greatest athlete in the history of Mississippi youth sports. By the time the game was over, the field was littered with bodies. Children cried in pain or wept in joy, rolling around, celebrating or lamenting in the soupy carnage. Parents and coaches were on the field to tend the wounded. Referees shook their heads. The score was 63-0, and every point was mine. Pop put his hand on my shoulder, and we beheld the spectacle of the battlefield together, where an alternate history played itself out, unraveling backward like reverse game tape, a glorious past where I had not quit, where I had inherited the best qualities of this beast on the grass that was my father. "We whipped him good, boy," he said. I couldn't help thinking that he'd wanted me to play, to feel what it was like to be him, at least for one game. To him, it wasn't cheating, it was fathering. There in the truck in the dark, plowing through fat gems of rain, Pop spoke first. "I sure would like you to play again," he said. "In high school, at least." "Pop," I said, "I hate football." "A man likes to see his boy play," he said. I had terrorized many young children. I had eaten many lunches. I had perhaps ruptured important organs and caused internal hemorrhaging. It felt great. Somehow, even then, I knew that this sort of triumphant feeling could never be achieved at our nation's many science fairs. "It's fun to whip a little tail, ain't it?" he said. "Yes, sir," I said. "It kind of is." And for once, it was not a lie. Thank you so much, everybody. The World's Largest Man. You got to get this book. It's amazing. Thank you.
Harrison Scott Key, y'all. Harrison Scott Key, the world's largest man. Somebody on your Christmas list will eat this up. Harrison is going to join us after the show at the table. We've got copies of The World's Largest Man to sell. He will sign it to you, visit with us, and just be a funny guy in general. He is so great. Yeah, he's so funny. Thank you, Harrison.